I knew that I would get along just fine with this next speaker when I emailed him if he had any requirements for his introduction, and he very reasonably said, as far as I'm concerned, you can say, and now welcome that asshole from Austin. I decided not to go in that direction, but it did make me like him. I did find some other things, that Matt Dillahunty has served as president of the atheist community of Austin since 2005. And co-hosts the group's atheist-oriented broadcast, The Nonprofits. He also hosts the group's public access television program, The Atheist Experience, a 90-minute live. Sweet. Also available on live stream and podcasts. So those of you who aren't applauding, go check out the podcast and then you will. What made me applaud is when I found out, in addition to his original suggestion for an introduction, is that his Twitter feed and all of our Twitter feeds exploded when Ricky Gervais said of him, he is an absolute genius. So now I would like to welcome that absolute genius from Austin, Matt Dillahunty.
Thank you. This can only be disappointing now. And it's interesting. The Reverend Barry Lynn is somebody who I greatly respect, and interestingly is probably one of a handful of people who could be seated next to me or opposite me in a debate. And as much as I'd love to convert as many high-profile theists as I can, I'm afraid I don't want to convert you because I need to keep referencing you as the theist on our side. So, how many people in the room have actually participated in formal public debates, structured? That's more than I thought. How many people have participated in non-formal debates? Yes, all of you should probably be raising your hand, because we're really just talking about arguing with people. When I was in junior high school, I had my one and only debate class, which seems odd as I'm up here talking about it now. And the first thing was to give a 5-minute speech, which at that time seemed like days. And today I'm bitching about having about 20 minutes or so, because if I take any of Amanda Marcotte's time, she will probably kill me. But the other thing that happened, and I'm going to kind of steal this, I might move a bit, or maybe not. All right, so I won't. The other thing that happened was that I was assigned to debate abortion, and I had the pro-life or the anti-choice side at that time, and I refused to do it, and my parents had to make a special trip into the classroom to talk to the teacher to explain that as Christians, we could not do this. I was definitely not going to be debating abortion, and for fear that if I convinced someone that it was okay, that their soul and all this stuff would be on my shoulders. And the teacher, I remember, was really snotty, and now I love her for it. But she tried to suggest that I take the opposite side, and I said, well, no, because if I fail to convince them that they shouldn't, then it's still my fault. And she then suggested, well, how about you debate euthanasia? And I had no idea what that was, and I literally thought it was youth in Asia. And my parents evidently didn't know either, so I debated it. And I don't really remember which side it was on or anything else. That was my introduction to debating, and then I blew it off. I flatly admit I do not care about or care for debate as a sport, earning points and in competition, but I still encourage people, if at all possible, engage in debate clubs and engage in those in those activities if you want to do this, because it can be beneficial. I strive in all the debates that I do. I'm actually working to change the nature of the debates that I do away from I'm going to talk, I'm going to talk, I'm going to talk, I'm going to talk, to more conversational debates. As much Q&A directed back and forth at each other as I possibly can. First of all, because that's where I live. I don't really do as much preparation as some other people. There's no slides. But also because that's the part that most interests me. It's the part where I think you get away from the script and find people are going to be more honest. And I think it's the part that the audience tends to take the most from when we actually have debates. So do people really change their mind because of debates? Yes! Absolutely! Now, it's unlikely and by the way, when I walk into a debate, I don't think it's very likely that I'm going to convince the opposition. I also don't think it's very likely that many people in the audience will leave with a vastly different position than what they walked in with. But I do it because, first of all, for many of them, it's the one and only time they've actually seen an atheist defending atheist positions. For others, it's the only time they've had their religious positions attacked and addressed. And it has the opportunity to dispel a lot of the misinformation that comes from, unfortunately, the pulpit, the media, the culture in general, that there's something about us godless heathens that is to be feared or is beneath everybody else. The other thing is that I come from a Christian background, so I'm planting little seeds and letting those seeds grow. Because when I look back and try to figure out what was it that took me from Southern Baptist, studying to be a preacher, to godless heathen, dragging everybody away from the doctrines of hell and other perversions, I don't know what it was. I have no idea. Was it the music that I listened to? I mean, there was a period of time when I burned all my albums because of backmasking and stuff, but what was it? Did I listen to the wrong music or the right music? Woo. Was it debates that I saw or conversations that I had? Was it the time that I was home from school and saw Madeleine Murray O'Hara on Phil Donahue and I had no idea who that was, and my mom came in and turned the TV off and said, "Don't watch that. That's an evil atheist, and they're trying to take God's country away from us." Was that part of it? Maybe. I didn't know anything about it. But the conversations and the debates that I had in the process of attempting to convert my atheist roommate definitely contributed. I'm not going to have time today, and my clock shut off, to go through specific arguments for the existence of God, although I might touch on a few of them here and there. And I'm going to close Brian's laptop a little because that's too far away. So there was a tweet that came in yesterday morning, actually, as I was leaving, that somebody copied me on eventually, which said something along the lines of, "I've never met anyone who left the Lord and who has a better life," and hashtag spiritual suicide. And they, of course, said, "Well, you've never met Matt." Now, he hasn't met me, and he may not believe me, but I may never be able to convince him that I was ever with the Lord, because I don't think I was either, depending on definitions. I don't think he is now either. But my life is better, vastly better. And in almost every conceivable way. Some of you are familiar with the backstory. I always thought I was going to be a preacher. My parents always thought I was going to be a preacher. Everybody I interacted with thought I was going to be a preacher. And I was terrified of being a preacher. And so I left high school. I joined the Navy. I went into the tech industry. And eventually that all fell apart. And I said, "Okay, God, now I'll be a preacher." I spent about 18 months in prayer and study. Wholeheartedly devoted myself to this, went out and talked to ministers, and was ready to do it because now I'm older, so there's nothing to be afraid of. It turns out what I was afraid of was public speaking. Seriously. And the first time I ever spoke on behalf of the ACA on the steps of the Capitol to 2 reporters who bothered to show up for our press release, our statement, I was a nervous wreck. And the first time I ever gave a talk to the ACA, I was less of a nervous wreck. And the reason was, I wasn't trying to bullshit anybody. I was talking about me and what I knew and what I believed and why. And as soon as you're comfortable with what you actually believe and why, it's a lot easier to talk about it, and you are a much better defender of your beliefs than you are if you have your doubts and you have concerns and you haven't actually looked into the fallacies. So I'm not going to give you tips on how to arrange a debate, which is the subject that I think would probably be most beneficial to student groups. And that's because I don't know. It's my favorite 3 words, I don't know. I wish I could tell you exactly what goes into it. I've run into countless student groups who have tried to put together debates, and they fail, and they fail, and they fail to actually happen. On a couple of occasions, and this is me just bragging, so get ready. On a couple couple of occasions, they got somebody to agree to a debate and then told them that they would be debating me and gave them links to some YouTube clips, and then they said, no, I don't think I want to do this debate anymore. That happens, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about me, because I'm pretty sure it's happened to Aaron, I'm pretty sure it's happened to JT. It's pretty much happened anytime they get a chance to see what you're about beforehand. There are people who think they want to debate this who back out. I've done a handful of debates, and I have made mistakes. There is one debate that I did that I would probably say most people would claim or view it as a loss. I don't really enter debates looking at it as a win-loss thing. I do it more about getting information out, making sure people get to see these things. And I genuinely love the conversation and the interaction. This particular debate was, I'd been sick for a week or so ahead of time, and so I was sitting on a stool kind of reading my opening. I wasn't animated at all, and I was up against Cliff Connectley, who is a street preacher and who was, rah, da, da, rah. And so the subject of the debate was, is Christianity rational? A topic that Cliff never once even attempted to address, but because he was so engaging, and I was the lump over on the other side, and because he asked questions that I did not have answers for, like, how do you know your meaning and purpose in life is true? That's kind of like, have you stopped beating your wife yet? It's a nonsensical question, and I kept trying to point this out. But because of all of that, I probably, in most people's eyes, lost that debate. That's important. Debates aren't necessarily about the facts at hand. They are, unfortunately, a lot about personality and delivery, engaging the audience, and not as much about the information as in presenting the information in a way that is accessible to people and that people are engaged in, and seeing that you believe this. The things that you can do to try to be better at arranging debates, draw out an outline of the debate, in the debate format, decide on a topic, and prepare for a long, protracted battle in email between the two sides to get everything sorted and agreed upon, and then understand that it will probably change at the last minute. But let that run its course. JT and I debated a father and son team of Catholics who insisted in a debate about morality in defending a theistic idea of God instead of the actual God that they believed in. And I was fine with that, because I immediately understood that if you're going to try to claim that morality needs a God, and all you're going to point to is a deistic God that doesn't interact with reality in any recognizable way, then that God is an empty proposition that can't tell you anything at all about morality. It is a lost case the second they chose to do that. You can't say, well, you need to find out from God what's moral, if your claim is that God, you're only going to defend a God that doesn't interact and tell anybody anything. Include as much direct back and forth time as possible in the debates. As I mentioned, especially if you're going to invite me, because I love it. But I think it's a good thing for everybody. I don't know, JT probably enjoys that part as well. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Publicize it. And then publicize it. And then go get other groups and churches and publicize it some more. What if we threw a debate and nobody showed up? That has happened. It's absolutely terrible. It's often difficult finding churches and religious organizations that are willing to do this. Wow, I got like, 7 minutes or something? Yeah. But you have to try, and as much as I can't stand CREW, the new label for Campus Crusade for Christ, that's a dumb name, but they are funded like you wouldn't believe, and they can help you get a debate. You could work together. We can have a little interfaith action going on there to try to actually get a debate going. And, because a lot of the guys that are debating on the other side of me are getting paid a lot while I'm getting a beer. But, so if you want to talk to me about specific arguments or responses to specific arguments, I'm happy to do that. If I get done and there's time for a question, I might hit one of those. You're going to run into always the moral argument. All debates have come down to that, every one of them, no matter what the actual topic is. It always comes down to morality. This is where we need to have a much better answer. I've got a number of videos up on the superiority of secular morality, and I've done lectures on it several times. Now popular, you're probably going to run into presuppositionalist apologetics like the transcendental argument for the existence of God, which makes people either sleep or rip their eyeballs out. If you're up against somebody who's a devotee of William Lane Craig, you're likely to run across the Kalam cosmological argument, which I've actually started to get help from physicists to kind of rebut different portions of it, but it's kind of long to go into, and this isn't about the specific arguments for the existence of God. So let me kind of move on and get to closing point with this. Burden of proof is something that we have to understand, and we have to make everyone else understand, because the theists will almost always try to shift it, even if they don't think they are. And some of my atheist colleagues will shift it too, by attempting to prove that Jesus didn't exist, or that gods don't exist, or by making broad assertions about morality and reality that they can't fully back up. We're back to, it's better to say I don't know, and as we've seen from your arguments and evidence, clearly neither do you. That's a much better response to an assertion that they have the answer to life, the universe, and blah, 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 blah. So, I posted something the other day. Somebody asked about the process of critical thinking, and I posted this at JT's blog. Did anybody see the comment? Good. So, step number one, care, and I mean really care, about whether the internal model of reality that you hold is as consistent with reality as it can be. This is the foundational principle of skepticism and critical thinking. It encourages you to be willing to change your mind. It encourages you to follow the evidence where it leads instead of leading the evidence where you want it to go. And it's what allows you to actively engage in all of the other steps that I'm going to talk about. Debate yourself a lot. And don't stop debating yourself just because you've also started debating other people. I don't care if I look schizophrenic. I have a series of videos I've been posting on my YouTube channel, the Drive Home Brain Dumps. I don't know if anybody's seen them. I used to use my cell phone, record myself talking as preparation for debates and talks, and debating with myself all the time. I started posting some of them because it seemed like a waste for nobody else to see how crazy I was, other than me and occasionally my wife. But doing that, arguing with yourself, will help you have a better understanding of why you believe what you do. Trying to approach the topic from a number of different angles puts you in the position of better understanding yourself, which makes you more competent and a more confident speaker, and puts you in a position where you can defend things, and it also lets you know where you need to stop. If you don't know why you believe it, don't pretend that you do. That's what we're opposed to. That's what the opposition is actually doing. To quote Bertrand Russell, it's a healthy thing now and then to hang a question mark on things you have long taken for granted. I am my own harshest fair critic. I have to include the word fair now because of some people on the internet. After every show and every talk and every debate, I'm replaying it in my head as I go to dinner or move on, trying to figure out what I said wrong, what I could say better, did I leave something out, etc. I love the next step in this process is to actively engage others and ask lots of questions. The Socratic method is a great tool for getting people to understand a position. Ask them questions that lead them towards realizing the point that you're trying to make. And it does a couple of different nifty things. Yes, it's a good tool for getting people to change their minds potentially, but I love to watch people think. Because as they think in new ways and hear them talk through it and sort through it, I learn new ways to think. I can't tell you how many times I have sat around smugly thinking I have addressed this particular argument, we'll just call it Pascal's wager, from every possible angle, and somebody will surprise me. Somebody, theist or atheist. It's actually kind of shocking. The fourth thing is to listen and read. And I hold reading as the purest form of listening. It is the epitome of active listening, which is what we should all be striving to do. Active listening is difficult to do, and I don't always succeed. Hearing Pascal's wager 1,000 times can kind of make you autopilot when it comes on. But I try to find the right balance between listening critically, looking for fallacies and strengths, and listening charitably. And charitable listening is the area where I probably struggle the most. I'm often labeled a firebrand, although thanks to Todd, or maybe thanks to August via Todd, I might go with firebland from now on to engage the diplomatic aspects of it as well. Charitable listening it's an area where a lot of atheists are inevitably going to struggle when having conversation and debates with theists. I just got a text message from Jerry DeWitt. And I'll tell you what it is when I'm done. It's where we're going to struggle when having conversations with debates with theists. I advocate more charitable listening in conversational debates and less informal debates where you need to be sharpened on your game and you're looking for fallacies, and they have already agreed to this structure where you are each attacking the position of the other. Most of the time, your person you're arguing with, though, outside of those formal debates, isn't an expert on the subject, perhaps isn't an expert on critical thinking, and this can sometimes make it difficult to tell when they've committed a serious fallacy or simply misspoken. So ask. Seek some clarity. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, excuse me, I think what you just said was a mistake. Could you say that again? And maybe we could pause here for a moment and define some terms and discuss this. You're not on a clock in your average debates. I'm on a clock. Thank you. All right. Start with the first error, if possible, or the most serious one. That's your point of attack. When people are on the show, you'll find that I often put them on hold or interrupt them. Interrupting is rude. Yeah, okay, so what? Here's the thing. There are a billion theistic apologists on TV shows. There's one Atheist Experience. It's my show. It's actually our show, but when I'm running it, it's my show. And if you've called in to talk to me, I need to stop you at the first fallacy, because I found that if I let you talk for 5 minutes, we now get to a conclusion that is unsound because we haven't established your premise. And when I go back to address that premise, you'll either say, I didn't say that, or what I actually said was this, and then you spend another 5 minutes down and no, we're going to define terms and we're going to try to get to the guts of it. Here's the big secret. We're at a disadvantage in debates. Despite the fact that theists have a burden of proof and that we have reason on our side, and that is they are claiming to have an answer and we're not. That's big. They know, in quotes, how the universe began, and we don't. They know the answer to the big questions, and we don't. And we're generally, human beings, uncomfortable with not knowing. And people are more likely to accept the answer that seems good enough than wait around and do the hard work of finding the answer that's actually correct. We are lazy. All of us are intellectually lazy. We are the beneficiaries of brilliant minds passed down through generations that have used deductive reasoning to bolster inductive reasoning. Yesterday is pretty much the same as today, and so we can rely on what we learned yesterday, and we go for the easy answers. And that is the major disadvantage that we have in debates. And it's also the avenue of attack. Make people more comfortable with not knowing because it encourages us to keep looking, because it's honest, because it keeps us from accepting risky answers that can have negative effects on everything in our lives, because it keeps us from attempting to defend ridiculous positions in debates against others. The big secret is that human behavior and laziness of thought and discomfort with uncertainty offer an advantage to those debating in favor of religious and supernatural claims, but the bigger secret is that we can fix it, and we can overcome all of that. We do it all the time. Every single conference I've ever been to, there have been individuals who walk up and say, I was a fundamentalist until I saw your show. I was an agnostic until I watched this debate. I wasn't sure what the hell I was until I saw this. Oh my gosh, JT changed my life. Oh my gosh, Arnrod changed my life. Oh my gosh, somebody talking about something changed their life. Getting people to understand the burden of proof, knowing what you're talking about, and being willing to say, I don't know, is the way we don't just win, we continue to win and change the world. Thanks.